Hi, and welcome to the first series in our awareness around men's mental health, in particular OCD. We're so excited that you're joining us today. We think this is such an important topic, and we wanted to bring on special guests to talk about specific topics related to men's mental health that often don't get talked about that much. And today we're going to be talking about mental health in the workplace and a lot of the different scenarios that happen in the workplace where sometimes you may feel alone, you don't know what to do, and sometimes you don't know how to reach out for help and support. So we've brought on a special guest today, Mr. Bryan Piatt. We love you.
Hello.
Bryan has been part of so many of our Game Changers initiatives, and so it's so good to have you on. But first, I want to introduce John Botto. If you have not already watched the YouTube video, introduce yourself. Tell us why this series is important to you.
Yep. So I'm John Botto. I am a guy with OCD, not an advocate, not anything else, but I guess I'm doing some advocacy right now. But in any case, yeah, I think we wanted to highlight the importance of men's mental health and topics that are associated with that aren't really talked about. And OCD Game Changers is all about kind of creating connection, and we felt like this would be the best outlet to do so. So we're excited to kind of talk about this. And my as my camera moves, I can't get this Zoom feature off. It's been driving me crazy. I've been telling Bryan and Chrissy about this for the last like 10 minutes.
And I
But
love that it does that because it
yeah,
drives me crazy, and I'm going to smile every time it does it.
look,
Just
here it
like,
goes.
that.
Yeah.
That
It's
was
gonna be the best part of
that's
our
the soap opera
conversation.
one.
I'm just gonna have to like just stay like as like very my Yeah. posture is gonna be great by the end of this, you know?
Yes. Well,
Yeah.
Bryan, before we get to you and introduce and have you introduce yourself, just wanted to let everyone know that OCD Game Changers is a 501c3 nonprofit. We are a all volunteer board. Everything that we do goes directly to our events that we have all around the world. The events are for connection, community, and also to provide resources into the community in which we were having the events. Our last event was in Dublin, and we had one in Minnesota with Bryan, who helped organize it, and we had one in Phoenix
Mhm.
where John was able to speak. But another one of our big goals is to be able to create community internationally. And so we'll be in Spain and hopefully Poland and Ireland again next year. So this series is leading up to Giving Tuesday. We were hoping that you can see the value in what we do as an organization and will donate. Every single dollar goes towards these events to help create community. So thank you for considering donating to us, and thank you for your support and being here. So Bryan, so great to have you. Introduce yourself before we get into the questions.
Yeah, it is awesome to be here with the two of you. I'm very jealous that my camera does not do the zooming, so I'm going to feel like the odd man out here. I am,
Hold it and push it back and forth.
yeah, I'm going to be doing a lot of
Imagine.
this throughout our conversation. Um, I am in Minnesota, so I live in the Twin Cities area of Minnesota. We did have the honor of hosting OCD Game Changers and helping organize that.
So good.
Last year. I think it was last fall,
It was
which was
last
such
fall and it
a
was so good.
wonderful,
Yep.
wonderful experience to have both of you in Minnesota for that. And I live with OCD. OCD Game Changers has been just such a powerful space for me over the years. When I was first getting diagnosed, understanding my own journey with OCD, uh, Chrissy, your work and attending OCD Game Changers were such like pivotal moments in just tapping into community and feeling less alone. And so to be at a place now where I can come on these types of conversations and chat about this and share and just kind of be in community, it's always so cool. So I work now actually I'm a pre-licensed therapist now. So I specialize in treating OCD and anxiety. So it's been a pretty full circle moment of living with OCD, going through my own therapy, and then now being able to help support people has been a pretty cool full circle moment. And so just super, super pumped to be here with the two of you.
Yes, I always think about you, and there's so many people too that this has happened with. Bryan was at one of our events, I think it was 2019.
Yeah.
And one of the things we really hope to do is inspire other people who maybe feel nervous or worried about sharing their
Yeah.
stories with the speakers that speak at OCD Game Changers. And that's exactly what happened with Bryan. Was
Yeah.
after that you were a speaker the following year and
Yep.
started a podcast and started talking all things around mental health and OCD. And I'm so proud of you for doing that and
Thank you.
how far you've come since that. And I'm just so glad that I was part of that and Game Changers was part of that journey too.
Yeah, because it's scary, right? It's like really scary to open up and share and advocate. And I think it's hard to do without some sort of, definitely not impossible to do, but my gosh, is it so much more supportive to do it with a community around you, right? People who you can
You get
kind of
it.
share and yeah, and who get it, right? And who can encourage you to lean into those uncomfortable spaces if it feels like something that you want to do to advocate and share and help other people. So it's been, yeah, Game Changers, such a huge part of that for me.
And
That's
other than just like showing us the big spoon that we in Minnesota walking around trying to find the big
Yep.
spoon.
Yep.
It was
Spoon and
the first
cherry.
time that we met, and like we met that trip, and just talking to you about OCD and like my journey and
Yeah.
whatnot. Like kind of I bring this up all the time, but it felt like I knew you for years.
Yeah,
So it was like really
absolutely.
easy to connect, and I think that's what makes like Game Changers such a
So
game
cool.
changer.
Look at that. Boom.
Yeah.
Play on words. No, it's so true. I think there's just a level of um yeah, just not having to say a lot of words, but people understanding what you're going through in their
Yeah.
own way, right? I think that's
yeah.
just it's pretty immeasurable how powerful that is.
You create a very vulnerable a space, a safe space for vulnerability and just
Hmm.
kind of that intimacy that feels like family.
Yep.
That's I walk away from those events being feeling like I've just spent time with family. Well,
Yeah.
a healthy family, not
Healthy
necessarily
family.
mine. Um, Anyway, speaking of sharing your story, I want to kick us off into talking about mental health in the workplace. And I think this is a great way to segue is how do we talk about our OCD with our coworkers, with our
Mm,
boss? Do we share what we've been through? Are there dangers in that? If we want to share it or if we need support, how do we know that people are safe? This is
yeah.
this is a scary topic for people. They are afraid sometimes when they have specific themes, if the
Yep.
content is going to make a difference, should they show the content, or if they're going to be discriminated against, if there's going to be stigma around it, or if they're then moving forward, how is your boss or your coworkers, if they find out, are they going to treat you differently? So I know
Yeah.
you don't need to answer all of those questions. Just I'm just
Yeah.
framing it as here are some of the issues that we run into in the workplace. So yeah, let's first talk about, that how scary it can be for people if they want to share what they've been through or if they feel like they need to share just in case they're going through a hard time and need support.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I can say that there's a couple different ways that I can come at this. First, in my current role, right, as a therapist treating OCD, I talk about it quite a bit, obviously, with people in the professional setting now, because it's actually a part now of my work is when it's therapeutically relevant to kind of let other people in on my own experience, to help other people feel less alone. And so I'm a pretty, for the most part, open book about OCD now. And I will say open book and also still scary, right? It's still scary sometimes to really open up and be truly honest about some of the particular obsessions and things like that that might be going on. I had a really interesting experience at my previous job. So prior to becoming a therapist, I worked at a TV station and I worked in the world of broadcast journalism for about 13 years. And I had gotten to the point actually with my mental health where I was struggling with panic attacks on live television, which was extremely scary. And also behind the scenes, struggling with OCD a lot. And I think that those two things were kind of playing off of each other, I think a lot. And so I actually had gotten to a point where I decided to take a break from being in front of the camera. I worked in front of the camera for a long time and had eventually like opened up to my boss at work about what was going on. And I was really lucky to have a really supportive workplace and a really supportive boss who I could share some of these things with. And I know not everybody has that. I was really lucky to have a boss that was really compassionate and understanding and worked with me and was wonderful. And then I ended up actually at a later point sitting down and doing an interview with a coworker of mine, actually publicly sharing my mental health story, which included talking about obsessions, taboo related obsessions, to
Wow.
the degree that I was comfortable, right? And that actually went over the airwaves in the Twin Cities, and it was really scary, and it was really like, oh my gosh, what am I about to do? And I will tell you, it's also been one of the coolest experiences from the standpoint of the number of people that have come up to me over the years and been like, thank you for sharing. You know, I mean, a whole wide range of things. Like I struggle with that too. Some people being like, wow, I didn't even realize that other people had thoughts like this. Just like the response that I got from people was so beautiful and so worth doing the uncomfortable thing, like sharing that really publicly. So of course, all this to say that we don't have to shout it from the rooftops. I probably that was probably a pretty extreme example of sharing things at work, but um, I don't know. I think it's different for everybody, but I feel very grateful that I had a workplace that I was able to be pretty open about it and had a really positive experience with that.
Yeah, one of the things that I do tell people, because in doing peer support, I'm often supporting people and when they want to share their story, or if they
Yeah,
are contemplating share their story. And one of the things I like to emphasize is evaluating your intention.
yeah,
What is the intention behind sharing it?
mhm,
Often it could be confession, often it can be, I want people to know.
yep,
So I'm not lying to them or that they know everything about who I am. And I definitely, sorry if y'all can hear my dog snoring. I definitely don't, I don't discourage people from sharing because, or
that's right.
wouldn't discourage you from sharing if like I feel confident the way you felt confident sharing. But in the workplace, you just have to also evaluate the repercussions of what that
Yeah,
meant, what
yeah,
repercussions could happen, and just be aware of that, and then evaluate the intention of why you were sharing. If you are in a relapse and you need to apply for FMLA or something, if you're really struggling, absolutely, you're going to have to tell your boss. You're going to have to tell someone trusted, and that's
yep,
okay. Consulting with a therapist, consulting with a peer support, on how to do that is an option for.
yep,
I think, yeah, kind of going off that point, Chrissy, like I felt as somebody with OCD in the workplace that at the time had no idea what OCD was until I was diagnosed. Um, I kind of felt like I knew I had anxiety and there was something wrong, but like I'm an oversharer.
mm,
So that tends to be problematic. And I think that's pretty common within like the OCD group is that like, it goes to that authenticity part where if I don't tell somebody this, I'm not being my truest self, or like I'm not,
mhm,
yeah. So I guess like kind of dealing with that or like kind of finding the middle spot on like how to best do that is something
yeah,
that I think consulting with my therapist was probably the easiest way to do so. And I don't know if you guys have, I mean, obviously you guys have seen this in your peer support and in your practice, but we love to overshare at times.
oh yeah,
At times.
yeah, yeah. I often hear, I think it's so true, John, and I think what I hear a lot of is almost this feeling like I owe it to people, like I'm doing something wrong if I don't share, right? And I think I know we're talking about the workplace here, but I see this a lot in the context of like dating and
Yes.
other type of like familial relationships. Like I'm doing something wrong if I'm not if those people don't understand that I'm having these kind of intrusive thoughts,
They
right?
don't know
And I
the
think it's
real me.
yes, and I think that's so important, right? Like to understand that you do not owe it to anybody, right? You're not doing anything wrong if you're not sharing all every single thing that's going on in your mind, right? I think it can be really helpful in spaces where we feel safe to help people understand, like, hey, I live with OCD. It's something that's kind of makes some certain things really challenging for me. I think that can be helpful for relationships, and yet also it's not a have to or a must or a you owe it to anybody, right? And then I think what it ultimately comes down to is just kind of an individual decision of what works best for you, and it's going to look different for everybody.
It also perpetuates blame when
Yeah.
you feel like you have to tell someone that, especially in a relationship, I need to tell my partner that I have POCD thoughts because
Yes.
they find out later and, I've deceived them. That right
Yes.
there is also creating self-blame.
Mhm.
And you shouldn't be self-blaming. This happened to you. It did not
That's
happen
right.
because of you. And
That's
so,
really important. Yeah, that's what
so
you forget. Yeah.
to confess that as this is a part of myself and my character, you're actually misleading people in that way. Um,
Yeah.
it is you have OCD, and I always say the same thing. You do not owe people your themes
Yeah.
ever.
Mhm.
You can tell people that you have OCD and you can generalize it all day long, but nobody deserves to know your theme unless you are 100% certain you want to tell them.
Yeah.
Still on like the disclosure topic, I think a thing for me that I've come across, while I was in law school, this wasn't necessarily at work, but um, people who don't understand OCD and OCD just getting um, the idea that it's all organization based and whatnot. Um, and I know just kind of from people I've talked to and whatnot, like when people say, "Oh, so OCD," there's just like
Mhm.
feeling to just like snap back because like what we've went through has been pretty tough, So to
Yep.
just like to use that phrase, "I'm so OCD," or like I'm also OCD, just based
Yep.
on you know the idea that media portrays. I guess what advice would you give to somebody in like, I guess, educating people in the workplace or in
Mhm.
school or even just family and friends to kind of create that distinction?
Yeah. It's it's tricky. I mean, I still hear it all the time, right? Like I think it's and I think this is also something that I've had to also kind of let myself off the hook at times and realize that it's also like not my job to educate every single person that I come in contact with,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Because I think there can sometimes be this like, oop, I just heard somebody use OCD in a not accurate way. Like I have to, like almost like I'm doing something wrong if I don't correct them,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
And so I've had to at times kind of be like, okay, like I don't have to always jump into that mode of educating if I don't feel like I'm in the place for that. Because it's like a vulnerable, what I found is it's a really vulnerable place to be in sometimes because it's, if somebody uses OCD in a way that's not accurate, and then I'm trying to explain to them kind of what that actually looks like for somebody living with OCD, it starts to trend in the direction sometimes of having to share some pretty vulnerable things about the type of intrusive thoughts that I experience and that other people experience. And there's times where I just don't really feel like I'm in a space to do that.
Mhm.
Um, but I think in broad terms, right, it's really helping people understand that um, if it's causing you if it's bringing you joy, right? If the behavior that you're talking about is bringing you joy, like cleaning or organizing or liking things to be a certain way, that's not OCD, right? And so I think that's something that's been helpful, just at a very high level, help people understand the difference, right? This has to be causing a real significant level of distress and people, and I don't that's what I think people don't always understand, right? Is the intense level of distress that OCD causes people. This isn't I'm doing this because this makes me feel good and it brings me joy. So sometimes just starting there with people I've found is a nice starting point, but it's hard and it's incredible how pervasive it is still in our society and in our culture. It's misused all the time.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I say, Brian, is if I'm in the headspace that I want to educate people, I I'm just like you. Some people even say it to me sometimes. They know what I do for a living. I'm like,
I
full on
know.
serious. Like,
Yeah.
I'm an advocate for
Yeah.
OCD. But
It's wild.
I will say to them, "What are you so OCD about?" And they'll tell me, and I go, "Do you enjoy it?
Mhm.
Does it feel good to do that?" And they say, "Oh my gosh, yes. I once my desk is organized, then I can be productive." And
Yeah.
I always just say, "Then you're not disordered. You're just anal." And that usually
Yeah.
like makes a little humor, and then they're a little bit more opened up to hear
Yeah.
what I have to
Yep.
say. But I don't
Yep.
always as silly as this sounds, like I've spent my first few years of advocacy just, pounding the sand, trying to change everybody's minds. And then I'm like,
Yeah.
that's for all the new advocates to do now. Like, because they're
Yeah.
angry and they're ready, they're wanting change, and and that energy is what we need. And I'm
Hmm.
just that energy. I just
Yeah.
don't have it in me anymore.
Yeah. Love that. It's like a boundary
Yeah,
It
a
is.
exactly.
little bit.
It is.
Yeah.
Um, I wanted to just touch on when sharing your diagnosis, or if you share your diagnosis with somebody at work. Um, Something that I tend to worry about is this idea of like being defined as my disorder. Um,
Yeah.
or I guess limited in job opportunities or whatnot. Have you ever experienced that, um
Mm.
or have you, in your experience as a therapist, like provided guidance to something like that? I mean, I know it's important to separate myself from the
Hmm.
disorder, but it is tough to get out of that mental loop of
Totally.
like, yeah, I've told these people I have OCD, and now I feel like I just am this to them. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think I always have to, it always, I don't know. It's so hard for me sometimes to sift out my own personal viewpoints versus what I know I'm sure is present out there in workplaces. Because, like, when I personally look at somebody living with OCD, and I'm not just saying this, I look at somebody who's gone through likely an immense amount of challenge in their life and they've found a way to maneuver it, right? And so I see it as, I always look at that as so much more of a like, wow, like look what you've maneuvered and look what you are maneuvering, and you're still showing up for your life, and that's an incredible, it's like an incredible testament to that person's character, right? So that's always so quickly where I go, and it's so hard for me to understand how it could be looked at as a negative. I think a lot of this just has to do with like the stigma that still exists, right? Like I think we'd be silly to just brush it off and say that it doesn't exist, because I know it is. I know it is out there. um but that's where I think, as a therapist, I probably don't have a really clear answer on this, but that's where I almost become like, start to feel like a very fierce advocate for that person. Right. And it's like, if there's anybody out there that's trying to tell you that you're not capable of doing everything that everybody else can do in the workplace, it's like, call me and I'll, like, let's have a conversation with that person in your workplace, and I know that obviously wouldn't happen all the time, but I find that that's where I start to get a little kind of, yeah, like that feistiness comes out in me sometimes as a therapist. And it's just, I don't know. I know I'm not like answering your question, and I think the fear is very real, but I will tell you, I haven't had the personal experience of seeing a lot of people actually being negatively harmed by sharing that with people in the workplace. I'm not saying that it doesn't exist, right? I don't want to be oblivious to that, but I personally don't feel like I've seen a lot of that actually happen. I think sometimes OCD can probably convince and come up with a really convincing story, right, of how that potentially might happen. Um, but yeah, again, I'm going to say it for the 17th time. I don't think I answered your question.
No,
Well,
I just said a
no.
lot.
I
I
think
just
it's
said a lot of words, basically.
I think it's important again to mention the themes. Yes, in sharing your diagnosis or that you have OCD, you are creating some sort of risk. in the workplace. It also depends on the work that you're doing, right?
Yeah, that's very true.
High paced or something like that, and someone is really struggling with perfectionism,
Mhm.
or constant checking. But again, I always work through with people if they're going to disclose about why do you need to share your theme? We have no idea how people are going to react to
Mm,
themes and what their own experience is with possibly what the theme represents. And
yep.
so for someone to hear that and be incapable of understanding OCD,
Yeah.
you are putting yourself at risk, and you cannot control who these people are going to share with. You can't control, what they're going to
Yeah.
do with that information. So I typically will say I would not share your theme, especially if it's taboo.
Yeah.
There's no need. If you need to share that you have OCD, and that's important to you, that's fine. You can do an overview of what themes are, but at the end of the day, you have no idea what people are going to take and run with your theme with.
Yeah.
Be careful.
It makes me think a little bit too, Chrissy, about just, I know it's not work related, but like advocacy related. I think sometimes when you're making that choice, if you want to advocate and share your story, there is sometimes, I think, that very all or nothing way of thinking that we get in. Like, if I'm going to advocate, I have to share everything, right? I have to like share all the themes that I experience. And I think what makes it a little bit more accessible is if you want to advocate, picking a theme that you feel most comfortable talking about, right? And start there, right? That is advocating. You
Yeah.
don't have to get into every single detail in order to be an advocate,
Oh, it took me a couple years to share about
right?
sexual orientation OCD. I
Yeah.
was more comfortable sharing about pedophilia themed OCD than sexual
Mm-hmm.
orientation because that was personal to me.
Mm-hmm.
I was susceptible to being triggered if I got negative feedback.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Does that make
Yeah.
sense? Because
Yes.
it was the biggest theme that I had when I had, hit rock bottom. And so you are exactly right. Take a theme, talk about emetophobia, talk about
Yeah.
relationship themed OCD if that wasn't your theme, or something, if or sexual orientation OCD if that wasn't your theme. That way you're educating people and seeing the feedback before you put something out there that you might get negative feedback from and it triggers
Yeah.
you.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, I've done that plenty of times. Like, kind of, harm was like my theme that kind of caused the spiral. So it's
Mm-hmm.
easier for me to like gauge somebody by being like, well, health OCD. Like I have like
Yeah.
this fear of like having a heart attack 24 hours of the day. So
Yep.
yeah, so something like that, it's just easier to share your story that way, or at least get
Yes.
somebody on the right page. But again, kind of like what we talked about before with the whole boundaries, we brought up boundaries. Um, you don't owe your story to anybody. And I think
Yes.
you just got to remember that. And you can be very successful in whatever career you want without
That's
anybody
right.
knowing
Right.
That's right.
every detail of your story. Uh,
100%.
yeah. So if you guys don't have any more uh on
We've got,
that,
we
I
got
will
a long
move
way to
us
go
along.
for
Moving
another
right
hour,
along.
believe it or
Yeah.
not.
So one thing that I did want to talk about that um so as I mentioned, my biggest theme was harm. At the time I finished my program with Rogers, I went to law school and I decided that I just really enjoyed criminal law. I did well in it, and I'm a big Law and Order SVU fan. So, so just like I was like, oh yeah, I'll be a prosecutor or defense attorney for criminal law.
Mhm.
When I started telling people about this, one of the biggest things that popped up is, well, aren't you scared that your theme is going to latch onto that profession, like a criminal attorney?
Mm,
Um, if anything, I found that it has made, I'm not an attorney yet, but I've done criminal cases as a paralegal. Um, I found that the exposure to it has just made it easier for me. Like I feel like harm is kind of like that theme is not there as much for me anymore.
yeah.
So in your position as a therapist and having OCD, I'm kind of interested in your experience and like,
Yeah.
you're probably hearing all different themes per day. Uh,
Mhm.
how do you separate yourself from your OCD and how do you separate your OCD and
Mhm.
from
Yeah.
controlling?
Yeah. It's a great question. It it uh it has shown up in really big ways as a therapist. Maybe even a little bit more than I had anticipated, to be honest. But not from the standpoint of other people's themes, like picking up other people's themes. It was interesting. I know a lot of people have talked about that. I haven't personally experienced that as much. I'm sure a lot of therapists have, but that hasn't really been the case for me. I think what has shown up probably the most is more like scrupulosity, like moral related type things, making sure that I'm a good therapist, right? Making sure that I'm not doing harm as a therapist. And this can show up in a lot of different ways in just how I'm approaching clients in sessions sometimes, how I'm interacting with them in sessions. I found it really is attached to my note taking, like taking notes as a therapist. We have to do a lot of like progress notes. And OCD has been really loud for me around like, what if I document this and then that somehow like adversely impacts my client down the road? It's interesting how like this very hyper morality, doing harm fears and obsessions have been really really strong for me as a therapist. And I know there's a lot of really great resources out there and groups for people who are OCD therapists and also live with OCD. It's a really unique thing. And I'll be honest that there's times where I'm like, was this the right decision for me to treat so closely, right? Like something that I'm living with it because it hits so close to home. And, and so there are moments where I'm like, wow, is this really good for my mental health? And then I have so many moments in session where I can connect right with clients in such a unique way through lived experience that it makes it all worth it. And so it's really unique, right? As a therapist, I think when you're also working with a client who has experienced a subtype of OCD that you personally have really experienced with at a really deep level, it's really interesting asking those clients to do exposures that you yourself know like would be really hard, like when you can really understand how tough that is. But it all comes back to values. I'm a big act guy. I'm a big act person. I think just it's there can be space for all of that in the room, and I just expect that every single day when I sit down in this office that stuff is going to show up. And yet at the end of the day, if I can do my best to be present for 50 minutes with that client and help them feel less alone and feel like we have created a safe container for them to say a lot of these things out loud, I feel like I've done my job. Right. And that's not going to look perfect. I think that's been a lot of my work too, is learning this isn't about being the best therapist. This is about being, I've actually had like somebody that I've worked with recently encourage me, like, strive to be an average therapist. And that'll actually probably set you up to do meaningful work with your clients. Because I think my brain can set the bar so dang high that I just set such an unrealistic expectation for myself. So right now I'm just like, can I just show up and be an average therapist and create a safe space for them? And at the end of the day, just try to continue to show up in alignment with my values.
Yeah, I love that. The average. Like I've been working on that in my own therapy, just kind of accepting that because I think, you know, we all want to be the best and like
Yes.
especially for well, I can only speak for myself, but um the diagnosis of OCD and like this like feeling of I guess not being worthy of things or not or being like kind of like a
Mm,
burden or disadvantage like you always like in my mind I'm always like okay what's next let's go high and I'm
yep.
always on this drive of
Yep.
like um
External validation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
And a lot of that is because of of how badly we suffer with self-esteem issues, in living with OCD and not being able to self-trust. The
Yep.
drive for external validation, lots of people go through this. It's kind of like I was listening to Alan Watts today, actually, and he was talking about the 7 stages of enlightenment. And something that really resonated with me was when you go through something extraordinary that shatters your world. And I was like, okay, this is OCD.
Mhm.
Then your ego fights to get back to who you were before.
Yeah.
You're in that limbo place. And that's where I see a lot of clients reaching out for external validation. How can I be the best at this? How can I make a ton of money in this? How can I, having a family is going to make this go away? I
Yep.
need to be famous. I need to be the best athlete.
Yes.
You're reaching for that to try to, make up for what OCD had shattered. It's a
Mm.
normal thing. I think we
Mhm.
don't talk about it a lot because like striving for external validation is a very shameful topic.
Mhm.
And a lot of people are in denial about it. I mean, I was for like 2 decades.
Yeah. Yep.
Just took that in a very
No, but I could talk about that for
Yeah.
17 hours because I think it's huge. I mean, it's been a big part of my process is that, what I think gets confusing sometimes, even for me, is that real striving part of myself is responsible for a lot of really cool things that I've done in my life, and yet it's not sustainable to be in that all the time, right? And so, and I think it's yeah, there's just something about like not yeah, being the best, striving to do more. For me, it's interesting how it shows up for me. It's always this like I need to be on. It's like this hyper fixation on I need to be on, and then I'm constantly scanning my internal experience all the time for like a threat to my onness. I'm not going to be on enough, and like I don't even know how to show up in spaces if I'm not going to be fully on, and that's been a lot of the work for me. I like how on those days is whether it's a therapist, whether it's whatever it is, and even in this conversation today, right? Showing up just not needing to be fully on is a lot of the work, right? Just being human at the end of the day, and
It's show up
like,
average to
show
this.
up average. Isn't it funny how like average is like a bad word? I feel like it's
Yeah,
become this
like
like
it
bad
makes me
word.
cringe.
All
Like I
of us are
feel, yeah,
average.
I know
Everybody's
that,
average.
I know.
but and I think like this mindset that we're not average, like just makes the failure piece just hit even harder. Like
Hmm.
if you don't succeed at what you're doing,
Yeah.
um, for me, I felt like every time, whenever I fail at a goal that I have, which like failure happens quite a bit just in life, that I've come to realize this
Hmm.
right now.
Hmm.
It just stings a lot more because I have all these like built up expectations in my head.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, no, I'm glad we got to talk about that a bit.
Yeah.
I think I'll just chime in really quick. I think for me, I'm just old enough now to
Mm.
realize this because I'm in my fourth decade of life. No, I mean, really though, it's only been in the last few years where it, I mean, my self-esteem was so destroyed from OCD and from childhood stuff. And I just like I fought with my ego for literally almost 20 years trying to get back to being important, which what would that be, age 7, or to become
Hmm.
something that was worthy or deserving.
Yeah.
And I know when I'm doing that. I can feel it. It's a feeling in my
Hmm.
body. It is a feeling of not being good enough. It's jealousy. It's, looking at I'll have a reaction to something someone did and I'll, immediately think I'm not good enough. I'm not like, and
Hmm.
it really is like to put it in the perspective of this is just your ego and not in a bad way. I mean, we all have ego
We
issues,
all have it.
but to be able to just sit back and just say, you know, yeah, like I've never used the word, but I probably now will start moving forward. Is I'm just average. I'm just another human being. I'm just an expression of the universe.
Yes.
That's all I am. And
Heck yeah.
when you look at it that way, then you are enough. You're
Yeah.
just as enough as the person sitting next to you. Um,
Yeah.
their expression just happens to be a little bit bigger today. and
Totally.
that is okay. But it is a hard fight. I will say that
It is.
seeking external validation after going through something like OCD and constantly wanting to be who you were or who you could have been without it, it is
Mm,
painful. It is just
yeah.
brokenness at times.
Yeah. Yes.
I should do
Um, huh?
I love what you just said. That we're I think an expression of the universe.
each one of us. I don't
I
know
think, and I did a
why
yeah.
they
Sorry, I keep
chose
cutting.
express to express with OCD. Thanks a lot.
Yeah,
Anyway, go ahead.
I keep cutting you guys off because I'm more important. I'm not average. I must
Yeah.
talk. I must speak. No, I
Yes,
just
no talk.
I did a podcast episode about this. I hosted a podcast for a while, and I had a conversation with a woman here locally who I've done some work with. She's lovely, and we talked about this idea of just being average and how I've at this stage of my life I've actually found it incredibly empowering. This idea of being average, and if you had told me that 10 years ago, it would have been like, "What are you talking about? That's the worst thing." But yeah, it brings me a lot of peace now.
I feel more connected when I see myself as just average.
Hmm.
There's no expectations, it's just,
No
yeah,
pressure.
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
I'm still working on it. So anybody out there that's watching, it's a
yeah,
process.
yeah,
I'm
totally.
like, I feel like every time I show up to therapy, I'm like, okay, I get what you're saying that we should just strive to be average, but like, no, let's
Yeah,
and then
you're like,
it's
I'm
like,
hearing it and I'm not believing it.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm waiting for that point where it's just gonna click in my in my head and be like it's okay. Um, but I wanted to just go back quickly to you talking about how it shows up in your therapy practice. And I just have to say, like, I've always like wondered, when I started this whole like when I wanted to do criminal law and stuff, like I always got nervous that it was gonna show up and I was just gonna fall apart. But I will say that it's probably made me more compassionate towards people I'm working with. I've done some pro bono work with people in the community who can't afford legal services, as well as like um, wrongfully convicted prisoners. And because you have a ton of like this like shame and guilt
Yeah.
and doubt and sadness from OCD, it makes you
Yeah.
so much more compassionate to another
Yep.
person. And I found that two of my therapists, like that I've had over the years, like they've shared that they had OCD as well. And like it's made me connect
Yeah.
so much better.
Mhm.
Yes.
So it's like while on paper it might seem like, oh, this is a negative thing, it's actually like, not to be corny, a superpower because
Oh
Yeah.
God, don't say
yeah.
superpower.
Oh, all
No, you
right. Well,
don't.
then blur me out. I don't know what to say. Um,
I hear what you're saying though, John.
like,
I know
like
there's
now I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna be like, oh, all right. Well, I guess my interviewing skills are not perfect. Like,
I think it gives us a different lens on the world.
yeah, it does. Yeah,
Like, yeah, and I think it, and that's not just, and I would, and I can understand the other vantage point of this, which is what it's not saying is like, oh, this is a gift, right? Or like, this is
yeah.
all
That's not
like,
what I mean at
and
all.
maybe you
I
are, I
think
don't know,
what you mean is your empathy is the superpower.
Yeah, yeah, like the under being able to
mm,
connect with people. Sorry, not like OCD
OCD.
is a superpower. Like, God, no. Like my old self that was struggling would smack me if I said that.
I'm
Like I
gonna
get
title. I'm
how,
gonna title this, and I post it. OCD is
yeah,
not a superpower, John.
yeah.
yeah. God, I'm sorry.
Did I?
This is why I'm not an advocate. I just talk. I talk too much. Make corny little like statements.
But I also I do think, and I'm probably digging us even more into a hole here that Chrissy's going to be like, just get us out of here. But
Like, stop.
I will tell you that as a therapist, the the minds of people, many people who sit in my office who struggle with OCD have incredible minds, like incredible. The creativity, the ways that they see the world, the depth, the like empathy, right? The things that you're talking about. Not everybody. I'm not saying that everybody fits this, but I think a lot of people who live with OCD have these incredible minds that can be used in such beautiful ways. And yet OCD is like, but their minds can also turn very quickly against them and cause an immense amount of struggle and an immense amount of challenge in their life too. I think there is a process in there that's worthy of exploring sometimes of like, I don't know, like how do we also recognize the ways that that brain works in really awesome ways and help them kind of put the reins on a little bit so that it doesn't go so spiraling out of control in the negative ways. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I think that is a really interesting exploration and something that I see a lot in this work.
But we have a hard time pushing into the middle. I mean, it is either I'm highly creative, I'm in this great spot, I'm a great person, I'm not average because I'm so wonderful. And
Yeah, yeah,
then it swings to the, oh my gosh, now I'm worried I'm a pedophile and I'm the worst person and I'm a horrible person, I'm a deviant, I'm this and this. There isn't a lot
yep,
in the middle, right? And
yeah.
that is, I mean,
That's
to
where life happens, right in the middle.
yeah, for me that is the goal in working toward recovery is recognizing both swings, like you said, like being in the heightened state too, the constant, everything is wonderful and things are going, that's exhausting too. It's just
Yep.
managing emotions, right? It's being able to see the world exists in the middle
Yeah. The
and
middle
that
path, the middle
both
way. Yeah.
sides are temporary. Both sides aren't sustainable.
Absolutely. Yep.
But I
Um,
agree, not with the superpower thing.
yeah, yeah.
I had to say that. I just had to say that.
No.
No, but I agree. From my perspective, I mean, I think without OCD, I couldn't be a peer support specialist. But having OCD and the depth of empathy I'm able to tap into, sometimes, especially when it comes to like trauma-informed care, I'm often surprised at the degree of empathy I'm capable of having for
Yeah.
things that challenge my own worldview and bias. Um,
Yeah.
Having empathy for things that I never thought I would have empathy for. Like John was talking about, like I'm sure the stuff that you run into in like criminal cases and things like that, to be able to kind of hold space for like understanding that you can have empathy for people that have done really bad things, that have made
Mhm.
mistakes, that have had severe trauma, and as a result, they did bad things with their life. It's been eye-opening for me. I appreciate
Yeah.
it, but it is an interesting bias to smash. And then to be able to be like, wow, I can go into the depths of empathy that I didn't think were possible. So it's interesting. It's like a controversial empathy.
Well, and that because then I think can't that empathy sometimes almost be a trigger then sometimes too? I know it has for me,
Yes,
right? Like, whoa,
absolutely.
I can really have empathy for people who have done these things, and oh my gosh, and then that can become like a whole other
What does
trigger. Why
that
am I
mean
having
about
empathy
me?
for them? What does
Yeah.
that mean about me?
Right.
Right?
Am I
Yeah.
capable of it?
Yep.
Do I like it? I
Right.
know. Absolutely.
Right.
So, yeah, it's
Yep.
nonstop. Like any kind of question that you have, what if question, it's just going to keep going.
It's gonna
I
keep
feel I
going.
feel like part of my ERP was like watching documentaries about like serial killers and stuff like that, and it was just like, okay, make sure like I just so uptight, like just be like, make sure you don't have any thoughts, which we all know that that's just not that's going to make it 10 times worse.
Yep.
And yeah, and then you're like, oh, well, actually, like, oh, this guy did really terrible things and as a person, but he had a bad past, and like I gotta feel bad for that part, not the part of his
Mhm.
action, but
Yeah.
the he started off
Yep.
on this foot, and wasn't given the things that most people are
Yep.
given. Um,
Yeah.
so to kind of move it along so we don't keep you all night, I know you had a busy day.
So we probably should wrap up soon. It's
Yeah,
been about,
I
gosh,
guess. Oh, sorry. I guess I just wanted to just lastly touch on burnout. And
Mm.
I think this probably plays into like what we discussed earlier. Just kind of having the boundaries and stuff. But,
Yep.
you know, do you have any examples within your own life or just from what you've seen with where like, people are not wanting to be average and they work to the point where
Yeah.
they burn themselves out and get sick and kind of end up in this OCD spiral all over again. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, if you want to touch on that just a little bit.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, out is, I mean, it's a massive topic, right? And I think all of us in some way, shape, or form have some relationship with it and are constantly probably exploring, hey, what does that look like for me? How do I know when I'm kind of teetering in that direction? And I was thinking about this before I hopped on here. I think for me, trying to curb burnout always looks like slowing down generally for me, right? There's got to be some level of slowing down. I think you know, even today, like I literally got down on the floor here and I went into child's pose, a yoga pose before one of my clients' sessions. Like I literally did that today. That's sometimes what curbing burnout looks like for me. It's taking even just a couple breaths and moments to myself before I see a client, just something to 1% more, make myself a little bit more present. But I'm going to sound like a broken record, but I think a lot of, for me personally, what curbing burnout looks like is exactly like you said, John, like trying to lower my expectations,
Mm.
and not walking into my day being like, I have to be the best therapist that ever therapisted today. Like I, I just
Therapism.
need therapism. It's just it's I don't need to that it can't be my goal today. My brain's going to try to pull me in that direction, but if I'm every single day in and day out thinking that that's the only way to feel good about myself, that's not going to be sustainable. That's what I've done a lot in the past, and I know I will always feel the pull to do that moving forward. It feels very inherent in who I am, but just trying to monitor that and keep an eye on that is super foundational to me when it comes to maneuvering burnout. I'm not sure what the two of you have found to be successful, but those are a couple of things that come up for me.
Yeah, I get to where I start struggling with compassion fatigue.
Yep.
Um, and when I get to compassion fatigue, I have to back it up.
Yep.
Because, if I ever get to burnout, we're done, game over.
Yep.
Um, and so it's, compassion for fatigue for me is, in supporting people day in and day out, whether that's groups in the community or one-on-one or even doing events sometimes. I'm constantly hearing stories, I'm constantly providing support. That is when my life gets super work. And then anything outside of that, I am not listening to anybody.
Yeah. Yep.
Like I can't have conversations with friends. I have to take some time to, just go watch The Walking Dead or, spend time out in nature. Like I can't, it's almost like work is when it comes to support and listening, all the things that are required for my job, I have to stop that. And
Yeah.
so I know like some of my good friends probably know when it's happening because I'll disappear for a few weeks. And it's not that I'm not a good friend. And of course, I would be there for them if they needed, but it's so
Yep.
important for me to take care of myself in order to show up for work. And I'll even scale back on work too. I'll close out some
Yeah.
appointments during the weeks. But it is, you know, crossing the burnout finish line is going to be detrimental. So the moment I start feeling compassion fatigue, I'm just like, okay, the
Yeah.
next couple weeks you'll find me in the woods
Totally.
outside of work.
Totally. Yep.
Yeah, I felt like so I worked full time while going to law school and not the smartest decision I had, but I was like, oh, I can do this. I did it. It wasn't pretty, but I did it. But what I noticed is when I was burnt out, that's when procrastination would start getting at its like highest
Mm-hmm.
levels.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that just didn't help anybody because that just created more stress. But I've learned not to be a yes man, and that has
Mm-hmm.
definitely prevented the burnout. Um, so I
Yeah.
think that's like an important lesson and kind of goes with that whole like we need to be the best, you want to keep saying yes because you
Mm-hmm.
want to be the best, but like at the end of the day, what I've learned is just that being able to be mentally clear and focused and enjoying little things
Yes.
has provided me the most relief because when you just surround yourself by work and focus on that, you're
Yep.
gonna it's gonna lead to problems. No.
Totally.
I think the struggle with being the yes man too with OCD is that OCD people tend to be such people pleasers.
Yeah.
No, and I know we could go into a whole other hour about this, but that is a
Yep.
struggle for a lot of people. It's not just you. It's like saying no is, oh my gosh, I'm going to let them down. They're going to be mad
Hmm.
at me. It's this conflict avoidance piece. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, it's like you have to work at learning to say yes and then work at how to manage the guilt after you say no.
No.
And
Yeah.
for me, it was very much just like exposure. I would have to practice saying no and then manage whatever was coming at me. And I would just sit through it and be like, well, they might hate me.
Yes.
They might never ask me to do anything again, but oh well.
Oh well.
Mhm.
Well, I think that's it. Thank you, Brian, for giving us your time today.
Thank you. That was the most average conversation I've ever had. It's
Yeah,
great.
yeah, totally average, totally average. Um,
Oh, this was
yeah,
great. Thank you
I
so
think
much
we,
for
yeah,
having me. It means a lot.
Yeah.
cool. And then so I guess this will be posted at some point this week, but next week we are back with Stephen Smith
Yeah.
and we'll talk family and OCD.
Excellent. Brian, thank you so much. Always good to see you. And thank you for always supporting Game Changers and being there for us. We just love you.
Always love you too. Thanks for all you do.
All right. Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. My pleasure. Thank you, John, for the interviewing too. We'll see you all next week.